Hey everyone, welcome back. So, this is part two of a lead based paint discussion. In last week, part one, we talked about how the lead based paint law is written, how it actually is written to assist us and protect us rather than actually hinder us as landlords. And we chatted about why we shouldn't write off lead based paint properties, especially as we are actively growing investors. Now, in this week's episode, we're going to start chatting about remediation. And remediation is what happens if you have to address lead based paint in your properties. So, there's going to be a lot of information packed into this. We're actually going to kind of skim over the generalities about the various ways that you can go about remediation. This by no means is meant to be a deep dive or any sort of encompassing introduction into this topic. So definitely be prepared to do additional research if you are looking into any of these methods for lead-based paint remediation. Building a real estate portfolio is as much about buying properties as being a de facto entrepreneur. I'm Karina Ufinger. I'm a multi-property investor, rental management company CEO, and also a landlord coach. I'm going to show you the systems and knowledge you need to thrive as a real estate entrepreneur. From your first property purchase to building a portfolio of passive income where you work less than 5 hours a week, you'll learn the essential information and skills to build a profitable portfolio and live the life you truly want. Whether you are well on your journey or just starting out, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Landlord Chick podcast. I think as landlords, most of us enjoy a good DIY. Like it's probably part of why we got into the business was the ability to do some things DIY. And I am one of those people. Every once in a while, I like a good DIY in my rentals. But lead-based paint is not a place you do a DIY and shoot from the hip. With lead-based paint, you need to know what you're doing. So when you're taking on these smaller tasks of addressing any area that has lead-based paint, you need to know what you're doing. So what are the things that you need? What are the tools you need to handle small areas of lead-based paint? Well, for starters, you're going to need tarps. You need to tarp the area that you're working, and you need to be generous with your tarping. This isn't a place to be stingy and save yourself $3. Be generous with your tarping and get disposable tarps. Disposable tarps will make your life so much easier when you are done. So get plenty of tarp. 2, you're going to need a shop vac with a HEPA filter. That's an HEPA filter. You can still get a small handheld shop vac. You don't necessarily need to buy the big honking thing that you would get to empty your water heater if you're going to swap it out. You can get smaller handheld shop vacs with HEPA filters. You might just have to look a little bit harder. But you'll need a shop vac with a HEPA filter. You'll need a spray bottle. This spray bottle can be maybe one of the ones you buy for cleaning products, or it can be just one you get at Target in the beauty section. You just need something that you can use to spray water. The other thing you're going to need is you're going to need PPE for yourself. In most cases, PPE for yourself is going to be a face mask. It's going to be a mask with a particulate filter. So you need to get something that'll filter out the chipping particles that are going to be disturbed as you are working. So those are the things you need for sure. Depending on your municipality, they might have additional requirements as far as your tools go. They might say that you need goggles or you need gloves. They can have their own rules in addition to some of the things I've already mentioned as far as your tools go. But that is a baseline of what you need. Now, there's a couple things to understand when you're going to be addressing lead-based paint. So, number one is that there are a few prohibited methods. You cannot dry scrape lead-based paint. That's what your water bottle's for. You need to fill that water bottle and you need to actually get wet the areas that you are going to be scraping. You want to basically get them saturated. So you absolutely do not dry scrape lead-based paint. Number two, as far as prohibited methods go, is using a heat gun or other tool to burn the paint off the surface. I don't necessarily know why somebody would do this because I got to tell you, nowhere near the list of things I think it'd be cool or a good idea to do would be to put a heat source near paint. Just not something that's on my bucket list, I guess. But that's definitely a prohibited method. Sandblasting is prohibited as well. The reason sandblasting is prohibited is because it's really hard to control where those particles are going to go when you're doing that. The other thing that is prohibited is chemically removing the paint. Now, this is actually crucial because a lot of times we like to use like a paint stripper. Technically, when we're working with lead-based paint, we shouldn't be using a chemical stripper to remove it. So those are a couple of the prohibited practices. Now, when you are working on small areas, let's say you have a windowsill that is chipping. Let's run through how you should be doing that. You're obviously going to have your PPP on. You're going to be spraying down the area to get it wet. You're going to then scrape away as much as you can of the chipping or peeling paint. So it's crucial that you are chipping and peeling, you're removing as much of the chipping and peeling paint as you can. Once you can no longer get any up, you don't need to continue to force it. You just need to basically get what is loose. When you are done chipping away the paint, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to suck up those particulates. So this is where your shop vac with the HEPA filter comes in. You're going to use that to suck up any of the particulates that you've created, the dust that you may have created. Hopefully, if you sprayed enough, you're really not creating much, if any, dust. You're more creating larger little chunklets, as my husband would say. So little tiny pieces of lead-based paint or longer strips of it. You really shouldn't be creating dust if you've sprayed properly. Once you've sucked up all the particulates that are in the windowsill and maybe on the floor but not on your tarp, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to prep that surface like you normally would for painting. And this might be where you would possibly create some lead-based paint dust. So after you do this part, maybe you sand it down a little bit. You're going to want to, guess what? Shop vac again, get all that particulate up. Then you can go ahead and do what you would normally do for adhering paint to that surface. So if you're going to prime it, prime it. If you're just going to slap 2 or 3 coats of paint on there, do that. But that's the way that you would handle a smaller aspect of lead-based paint addressing. Now, let's say we're going large scale. Let's say we're going with abatement. Let's get to that topic. When we talk about lead-based paint abatement, we are referring to removing the existence of lead-based paint entirely. Now, actual lead-based paint abatement begins with 2 things. It begins with an inspection and risk assessment. In most states, the inspector for lead-based paint and the person who offers the risk assessment must be certified in lead-based paint abatement projects. So before you start going down the road of abatement, one of your first steps is to have a formal inspection where they look at the property and they look at the paint, the age of the property. They do a few tests and they create an assessment that tells you about the likelihood of lead-based paint, what your risk is with it, and where you need to be addressing it. So it's going to identify the areas that they know lead based paint exists. It's going to tell you exactly how much you'll need to abate. And it gives you a fairly big encompassment of the work that's going to need to be done. Once you have your inspection, then you go through the process of finding a company. It's likely going to be a company that is certified for lead based paint abatement. Now, abatement again is removing all of the lead based paint from the premises. So, this is a costly expense. The cost for this can be anywhere from $10,000. Honestly, I have seen $30,000, $35,000. So, lead based paint abatement, the complete removal of it, is a very costly thing. And it does require a company who is certified in lead based paint abatement through an approved EPA training program. Now, abatement can be something you do voluntarily. Sometimes there will be flippers who will buy a derelict property. Let's say it's a duplex, and they will go through the process of doing lead abatement because they know they're going to hold it long term. They're going to do extensive work to it anyway. So at this point, let's just go ahead and do the lead abatement. So lead abatement can be an optional undertaking. In some cases, but not often. I want to stress this. This is not often. It's not a common occurrence at all. But there have been a few instances where lead abatement has been mandated by a municipality or a state agency. Now, what's critical to understanding before your mind gets away from you and be like, hey, I thought you said there wasn't much risk. Understand that when lead abatement is ordered, it has come out of a situation where a property owner has been derelict in their duties and responsibilities. So, this has come when a landlord has filled out paperwork that says, no, there's no lead based paint here, or they have actually failed to give any paperwork regarding lead based paint. They have failed to address a situation which was brought to their attention by a tenant. This is when lead abatement happens on a forced level. It's when the landlord has seriously derelicted their duties in regards to notification and addressing of issues. Do not think for a second that the local governments walk through and say, you have to do lead abatement. You have to do lead abatement. You have to, because, well, we feel like you should do it. No, that doesn't happen. In the instances where lead abatement has occurred, it has been because a health hazard has occurred that a landlord has not properly responded to, and likely also did not notify tenants of the possibility of lead-based paint. So there was some serious issues that went on in regards to what the landlord did in that property that created the situation where lead abatement was mandated. So do not have this nightmare scenario in your head thinking that they can just randomly do it. In every instance I have heard of, there has been some compelling reason that came from the landlord's own negligence as to why lead abatement was forced. So, how do you find lead abatement contractors, ones that are certified? Well, that's honestly going to be a Google search. But one of the things that they will be easily able to show you is a certificate. Any training program for lead abatement that is approved by the EPA, they will be able to send you a copy of their certificate. And on it, it will have the EPA logo, and it will likely have some sort of other EPA writing on it that says this program is in compliance with the Environmental Protection Agency requirements per the Lead Based Paint Housing Act. So that's crucial when you're hiring a lead abatement contractor. Don't just take their word for it. Get a copy of that sheet of paper that shows, hey, we did complete this. And by the way, lead abatement certification is not a one and done thing. This is something you keep up with, like a real estate license. So they do actually have to recertify. So it's critical to make sure you do a little bit of research and make sure you're getting a company that is not only reputable, but they do also have that EPA certification that is required for lead abatement. Now, when you're going with lead based paint abatement, you have a few options that are open to you. Abatement in itself doesn't necessarily mean like full on removal, like down to bare wood. There are a couple methods that can be done here. Now, these methods, when we're talking about these, should likely be done by the certified contractors that we talked about before. So, the first method is enclosure. And this is probably the easiest of all methods when it comes to lead based paint. And that is when you cover the wall with a wall covering. So this is usually done for large walls, like large bedroom walls. If you're going to abate the lead-based paint, you're going to put up maybe wallpaper. That's the most obvious choice for a wall covering. So wallpaper. This is sometimes why you see wallpaper still in older homes, is because it's a method of lead abatement. So you're going to cover the entire wall with wallpaper. That is enclosure method of lead abatement. Method number 2 would be replacement. This method involves completely removing the door, the window, the molding, whatever item is covered in lead-based paint, and just replacing it with a new one. Replacement might seem like a viable option as far as smaller items go, like trim and things like that. But if you're talking about an entire unit, that's when it gets costly. And it's obviously not necessarily the most cost effective solution for a wall as well, because removing a wall and putting up more drywall, that's going to be fairly expensive. It's going to be more expensive than having someone put wallpaper up. The next method for lead abatement is removal of the paint. Now, this method involves completely removing the paint in EPA certified ways, and this will create for sure a large amount of lead dust, and it really should and need to be performed by a certified professional. So when you're going with paint removal and you are sanding things down to bare wood, or you are taking all the lead-based paint off a wall, you're choosing not to do a wall covering, that's paint removal, and that should be done by a certified professional. Now, the final method of lead-based paint abatement is called encapsulation. This method not only covers, but it also seals the affected area with a specific coating. This is some of the lesser expensive methods of lead-based paint abatement, but it cannot be used on all surfaces. So you cannot use encapsulation on a wall, but you can use encapsulation on a door or door trim. So as far as cost effectiveness goes, usually the most cost effective in general is going to be replacement as far as you're talking about window trim, things like that. Your next least expensive, like when we're talking about maybe walls, your least expensive way is going to be enclosure. That's going to be putting wallpaper on it. I think your more expensive methods are going to be the paint removal and encapsulation, because both of those will definitely not only be done by certified professionals, but they will also require specific material and tools to get it done. So that's the 4 methods for lead-based paint abatement. Now, again, abatement is completely an optional undertaking in most circumstances. So don't necessarily think that this is going to happen to you, that you're going to have to do lead-based paint abatement. Part of this purpose of this podcast was to take away a lot of the fear that surrounds lead based paint and a lot of the uncertainty. I hope I've done that for you. I hope I've showed you that number one, the lead based paint law, under most circumstances, is written to be an asset to you. It's not meant to get you in trouble. It's not meant to hinder you. It's actually meant to protect you if you follow their guidelines. I hope I've helped you understand that writing off lead based paint properties because they have it is a really cost ineffective way of building and growing your portfolio. Because these properties that are older are some of the easiest ones to get into because of the sheer quantity of them, but then also because of the price point. These older properties tend to be lower price points than anything that's going to be from the 80s, 90s, or 2000s. So that's why it's more cost effective and time effective to get into real estate using lead based paint properties. And I hope with today, maybe I haven't taken away fear, maybe I haven't done anything like that, but I've given you some knowledge that you can actually use when it comes to your properties. Because this episode was more about making it safe, keeping you safe, keeping your tenant safe, and also keeping your bottom line safe and understanding what the various methods are that might be open to you when it comes to lead based paint remediation. Because let's be honest, we're not necessarily in here to just spend money like a freeloader. We want to be cost effective, but we certainly don't want to be cost effective at the compromise of our health or our tenant's health, or even the potential of a fine for not doing something properly. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series on lead based paint. If there's another topic you want me to delve into like this, into two-part episodes, please let me know. I was so happy to do this one as a request by Phil. Phil actually found me over on Instagram and he told me, hey, can you shed some light on lead based paint? Because he was thinking about getting into investing. He'd heard both sides of the coin as far as lead based paint goes, but he was really interested in hearing about why lead based paint shouldn't be feared and what are some of the options that are open to him as an investor when it comes to addressing lead based paint. Guys, please let me know if you have any ideas for topics, anything you'd love to hear. I want to hear from you guys. I want to be sure I'm addressing the things you want to hear about because you guys are the reasons that I'm doing this podcast. Have a great week, you guys.